This is Math for Life Note-Taking Guide, Day 3. Today we're going to talk about something called bias. So just to kind of read the top up here for you, it says, when designing a survey, it is important that the survey questions be carefully written. If a question is poorly written, then the response of the people surveyed may not accurately reflect the opinions or actions. These types of flawed questions are called biased questions. There are several reasons why a question may be biased. The question may encourage the respondent to answer in a particular way. The question may be perceived as too sensitive to answer truthfully. And the last one, the question may not provide the respondent with enough information to give an accurate opinion. Bias may also be introduced through the order in which the questions are asked, or may result when the person conducting the interview intentionally or unintentionally influences the responses of those interviewed. So really, bias is when we're making it so a question is not going to have accurate results because of the way we're asking the question. I thought this was a cute little comic over here that you guys, it's hard to read on this video, but if you look at your paper and you read it, it says, define bias, a careful review of the facts, which result in any viewpoint other than mine. So she's kind of just saying that if you don't agree with me, then you're biased. So what we're going to do today is we're going to read different questions and different samples, and we're going to see whether or not we think they're biased. If they are biased, we're going to tell why they are and then kind of change the question or say how we could change the question to make it not biased. So here's our first example. And it says, tell why the question may be biased, describe how to correct the flaw. So A, many national parks are being heavily damaged by acid rain. Do you favor government funding to help prevent acid rain? So is there a problem with this question? Is it biased or not biased? Well, I'm going to say there is a problem with this question, and I'm going to say that this question is biased because of the way that it's written. So it says many national parks are being heavily damaged by acid rain. Well, that definitely makes people form an opinion before they can even answer the question. You shouldn't be stating the fact that or the opinion of national parks being damaged by acid rain and then ask a question about preventing acid rain. So how could they have written that question better? Well, they could have left out the information about acid rain and just asked, do you favor government funding to help prevent acid rain? I think that would be a less biased question than the one that was asked there. So it says to describe how to correct the flaw. So I didn't write down any of that information, but you would want to write that down also. Okay. B, do you agree with the amendments to the Clean Air Act? Well, that question doesn't actually seem too biased. Like, we're just straight to the point. Do we agree or do not agree with the Clean Air Act? So the only problem I could see with that is not making people aware of the Clean Air, what the Clean Air Act is. It assumes that people understand the Clean Air Act. So only the people who understand the Clean Air Act and have read the amendments to it would be able to answer that question honestly. So do you agree with the amendments to the Clean Air Act? I believe that this is also biased just because we expect people to understand information that we did not give to all the people equally. All right, C. Police officers ask mall visitors, do you wear your seatbelt regularly? Well, having a police officer ask you if you wear your seatbelt might be a problem. Police officers give tickets to people who do not wear their seatbelts. So clearly people are not going to answer that question honestly in front of a police officer. So how could we fix this question right here that clearly is biased? We should have someone other than a police officer ask the question. Okay. So that's kind of how bias works and how we're going to do our worksheet today. All right. Sometimes when we're talking about bias, we're talking about a sample being biased as opposed to the actual question being biased. So here's an example here. It says the manager of a concert hall wants to know how often people in the community attend concerts. The manager asked 50 people standing in line for a rock concert how many concerts per year they attend. Tell whether the sample is biased or unbiased and explain your reasoning. Well, I think that this is biased again because I don't think that if you want to know how the community feels about it, you should ask people standing in line for a rock concert. Everybody standing in line for the rock concert actually attends concerts. So if you want to have a clear picture of what the community thinks, you need to ask people not standing in line at the rock concert. Example 3. You are a member of the prom committee. You want to poll members of the senior class to find out where they want to hold the prom. There are 324 students in the senior class. Describe a method for selecting a random sample of 40 seniors to poll. So we want you to decide how you can select 40 seniors out of the 324 without being biased about it. So really what we're going to do is refer to some of those methods that we learned yesterday. I think one of the best ways to do this would be a random sample. So if we did a random sample, how could we do that? We could put all 324 kids' names in a hat and pull them out until we had 40. That would be a random sample of the seniors. We could use a computer program and put their names in the computer program and have a random number generator pull out 40 of their names on the computer program. We would want to do whatever we can to make that as random as possible so that there's no bias in who we're picking. You definitely wouldn't want to do it by like homeroom classes and have one homeroom class be, you know, juniors or something, because they're not going to care where the senior prom is. So just kind of think about how you could make that fair without having any bias involved. All right, the last question says, or talks about finding the margin of error. This up here is the formula for margin of error. It says margin of error is plus or minus 1 over the square root of n. And n is the size of the sample taken. So we're just going to read this next question and see if we can't follow that instructions on that formula. So example 4. In a survey of 1,011 people, 52% said that the television is their main source of the news. What is the margin of error for the survey? Well, I know I'm going to be doing plus or minus 1 over the square root of n. And again, we said that n was the number of people surveyed. We're surveying 1,011 people here. So I can actually punch that in my calculator with everything but that plus or minus in front of it. So do 1 divided by the square root of 1,011 on your calculator. It's going to give you, when you punch that in, 0.3145 as a decimal point number. Now, because we're talking about margin of error, we want that as a percent. We want plus or minus this many percents being our error. So we're going to move our decimal point 2 places to get the margin of error there. Oh, I think I forgot to put my 0 in front of the 3 when I said that. Sorry. So let me back that up just a little bit, because my decimal point doesn't go there. I forgot to write my 3 when I said 0.03145, and then I forgot to write it. So I moved my decimal point 2 places to right here. My margin of error will be 3.145%. And that's plus or minus. That means when I ask this group of people the question, and 52% of them said that television is the main source of their news, that's really saying that my margin of error can go 3% above this, meaning I could have really up to 55% of the people who use TV as their main source, or I could subtract 3% off of that and have 49% of the people who use TV as their main source. So this formula right here finds me the margin of error, and you'll have several problems today on your homework that does that. Thanks for watching today, you guys. Good luck on your homework.